A hush settled over the towering pines as the four friends tromped along the narrow forest trail, their breath steaming in the frosty air. They had planned this winter trek for weeks, imagining moonlit summits and crackling campfires under a blanket of stars. Heavy packs rested comfortably on their shoulders, and the path beneath their crampons was firm, broken only by the occasional bleached pine cone. By late afternoon, an unexpected wind whipped down the valley, stirring clouds of snow that danced like restless spirits through the trees. In moments, the gentle flurry turned to driving snow, and the tall pines around them vanished behind a wall of white. Their compass needles spun unpredictably, and the glowing screens of their GPS devices dimmed as the cold seeped into every circuit. They dropped their packs beside a frozen creek and huddled beneath the shelter of spruce boughs, lighting a small fire with trembling hands. The flames sputtered under the relentless onslaught of snowflakes, and the night closed in, swallowing the last of the daylight. Shadows shifted like living things, and every crack of a branch sounded like a breaking limb. With drizzle freezing to ice on their scarves and the wind's howl pounding in their ears, they realized they were no longer in control of their journey. The trail markers, bright orange ribbons tied weeks before, were now buried beneath drifts. Their laughter faded into tense silence as flakes drifted into their eyelashes, and the forest around them grew impossibly vast and unlatching. In the gathering gloom, a single thought nodded in each mind. They were lost in a winter wilderness, at the mercy of the storm's fury. Yet even in that growing despair, there came a sudden, startling cry, a raven's harsh, raucous caw from high in the branches overhead. It cut through the wind like a signal bell, a sound so clear and insistent that it seemed to promise a way forward where none existed. In that moment of frozen fear, the campers looked up, wondering if this black-feathered sentinel held the key to their salvation. Night pressed in even more tightly as the campers huddled around their sputtering fire, its weak glow barely keeping the swirling snow at bay. Emma was tying her boots tighter, while Carlos pressed his mittened hand over his compass, which spun with wild uncertainty. Priya and Marcus exchanged uneasy glances. Every instinct screamed that they were off trail, with only each other and the storm for company. Then came a sudden harsh caw overhead, sliced through the wind and echoed among the trunks like a warning bell. The four froze, eyes widening as a sleek black shape flitted against the snow-blurred sky. The raven landed on a bare branch just beyond their grove, ruffling its feathers and calling again, "Caw, caw!" The sound so startlingly clear, it felt as if it belonged to a different world. Each call tore through the storm's roar, punctuating the cold with intention. Emma stood and peered upward, marveling at the raven's unhurried stance as it watched them. Carlos lifted his headlamp beam to where it perched, the bird's eye reflecting back the glow for an instant, before it cawed a third time and dipped its beak toward a darker grove of trees. No ordinary woodland bird. This raven repeated its call. Caw, caw! Each echo seeming to draw a line through the drifting snow. Priya, eyes bright with sudden clarity, whispered, "It's trying to show us something." The others leaned in as the raven flapped down to a lower branch, then hopped again to the right, delivering another sharp caw that rang out like a single note on a flute. The campers realized that with each caw, the raven shifted its position, always staying just beyond their reach, always in view of a subtle break in the snow-filled pines. Though none had arranged such a rescue before, they instinctively understood its message. Follow. As the wind whipped harder, that black sentinel's caws became the only guide in a world gone white, and they knew they had to trust its uncanny knowledge of the forest's hidden paths if they ever hoped to find their way back to warmth and safety. As the wind howled around them, the campers pressed their backs against the rough bark of a spruce, straining to hear the raven's raucous calls above the storm's fury. Each caw-caw came not as a random cry, but in a precise rhythm. Two quick calls, then a brief pause, followed by a single, drawn-out cry. Marcus, his teeth chattering, mimicked the pattern in the falling snow, tapping out the beats on his insulated glove. Priya knelt to trace the sequence's arc in the snow, marking the spots where the raven had perched for its double-note alarms. She realized that each time the bird called, it then shifted a little farther downhill, always keeping sight of the campsite but guiding them subtly toward the creek's frozen crossing. Emma shone her headlamp through the blizzard, and within the dim cone of light, they saw a narrow corridor of broken saplings, where the wind blew less fiercely. Carlos pointed out that the raven's pauses aligned perfectly with the slight lulls in the squall sweeping through the trees, as if the bird waited for a clearing in the wind before letting out its next rallying call. The campers exchanged glances charged with understanding. The raven was mapping a safe route, marking each landmark in the whiteout. Between the twisted trunks and drifted mounds, they glimpsed the outline of a fallen log that matched the raven's third perch, an unsteady bridge over a deep snowdrift. With renewed determination, they counted the raven's 2 quick calls and long note, stepping from one marker to the next as the bird hopped ahead. Each precise caw, caw, caw cut through the storm like a compass needle, pointing the way forward. In that frozen forest, where sight and sound were muffled by swirling flakes, it was the raven's unwavering pattern, its singular devotion to those 3 beats, that became their guiding light, proving that even in the deepest whiteout, nature's own sentinel could chart a course back to safety. Clutching their headlamps, the 4 friends rose, each breath visible in the frigid air. Emma took the lead, stepping carefully into the faint corridor of broken saplings the raven had revealed. The bird watched them from its perch, its obsidian eyes gleaming, before launching into the wind and landing a short distance ahead. They trudged through knee-deep drifts, their snowshoes crunching against hidden twigs as the raven settled on a moss-covered stump. Carlos paused at the stump, noting the bird's stance, the way its head tilted toward a narrow channel between 2 ancient pines. He motioned the others forward, and they followed, threading their way past frozen boulders and skeletal ferns that clawed at their pant legs. Each time the storm's howl threatened to disorient them, the raven's sharp, rolling caw shattered the whiteout, guiding them onward. Priya kept the bird in view, her flashlight beam dancing across its glossy feathers as it hopped to a fallen log arched over a quiet brook. The water beneath the ice gurgled softly, and the raven's squat form atop the log marked the only safe spot to cross without plunging into hidden currents. Emma tested the log's stability with her ice axe, then stepped across with measured balance, her teammates following in lockstep. On the far bank, the raven dropped to a lower branch, calling again, its voice the only compass in the drifting storm. Marcus spotted the faint impression of a trail on the snow-packed ground, a path the wind had not yet erased. They pressed on, each caw drawing them closer to thicker trees and fainter wind, until the dense pines suddenly opened onto a familiar clearing, the edge of the forest road. The raven perched on a sturdy post by the gate, its final triumphant caw echoing like a victory cry. In that moment, the campers realized they had been led not by luck, but by the watchful guidance of a single black sentinel, whose unwavering calls had cut a path through the storm's fury and carried them back to safety. The raven's caw rang out again, encouraging the friends as they approached the creek's icy edge. Beneath the swirling snow, the water's surface glinted with cracking patterns, betraying treacherous currents beneath. Emma peered where the raven had landed on a stout wooden culvert, its broad planks forming a makeshift bridge across the churning stream. Carlos tested the first plank with his ice axe, nodding as it held firm beneath his weight. One by one, they stepped onto the narrow crossing, Emma first, followed by Priya, then Marcus and Carlos, each footfall measured and deliberate. The wind gusted, causing the ravine's walls to howl, but the raven remained perched at the far end, its watchful gaze a steadfast beacon. Halfway across, the log bridge creaked ominously, and a sudden shift in the snow's weight sent a thin layer of ice cracking. Hearts pounding, they paused, luminous breath fogging in the headlamp beams. The raven's single caw pierced the tension, as if urging them onward. Summoning courage, Emma took the next step, then Priya, then the others. their movements synchronized by the birds' unwavering presence. Safe on the opposite bank, they exhaled in unison, shoulders relaxing as their feet found solid, snow-packed earth. The raven hopped down and flapped its wings triumphantly, its black silhouette sharp against the muted forest. In that moment, the bridge behind them seemed less a random log and more a deliberate gift, placed and marked by nature's own guide. Their path out of the whiteout had been fraught with hidden danger, yet each step had been illuminated by the raven's raucous caws, leading them past unseen perils to the promise of open road and the warmth of home. As the final tree line gave way to an open clearing, the raven let out one last triumphant caw before taking wing, its black form fading into the storm's swirling white. The campers found themselves standing where the forest met the old logging road, the familiar ribbon of gravel now barely visible beneath a fresh coat of snow. Their relief was immediate but cautious. They knew this stretch was used by the park's snow patrol vehicles, and somewhere beyond the bend would be warmth, shelter, and help. Emma scanned the horizon and spotted a faint glow, two amber beams bobbing through the drifting flakes. Moments later, the deep rumble of tracked snow machines broke the night's hush. Park rescuers emerged from the swirling storm, their headlights cutting V-shaped beams through the snowfall. The team stopped as the campers waved frantically, their cheers swallowed by the wind. The rescuers skidded to a halt, engines idling, and the driver jumped down to guide them to the warmth of the heated cabin. Shivering but safe, Emma and her friends climbed aboard, their gear settling on the bench seats beneath a crackling heater. Carlos offered thanks through chattering teeth, and Priya replayed the raven's guiding calls for the rescuers, who listened in awe. The lead rescuer smiled and shook his head. "We'd have kept searching, but you were always one wild bird ahead of us." As the snow machine trundled toward the ranger station, its horn echoing softly, the campers gazed back at the dark forest edge. In their minds, the silhouette of the raven lingered, a black sentinel whose raucous caws had carved a path through the snowbound night and delivered lost travelers into the arms of rescue. In the weeks that followed, the tale of the raven's midnight guidance became legend among local hikers and rangers. At the trailhead where the campers first lost their way, the Park Service erected a simple totem-style marker, a carved wooden post topped with a raven in mid-caw, wings half spread as if alerting travelers to unseen dangers. Each dawn, passers-by pause before the raven's watchful form. Some leave a small pine cone or a feather at its base. Others whisper a quiet word of thanks. Rangers often linger there before beginning their patrols, reminding themselves that even in the thickest blizzard, nature offers its own sentinels. Emma, Carlos, Priya, and Marcus returned one crisp morning to see their names inscribed on a bronze plaque at the post's foot, alongside the raven's carved silhouette. They shared smiles and stories of how each caw had steered them through drifts and darkness, saving them from fear and frost. From that day on, every lost hiker who found themselves drawn to Raven Ridge felt the unseen presence of that tireless guide. And when the wind stirs the pines and carries a lone, raucous caw across the snow, travelers know they are never truly alone, that a black sentinel watches overhead, ready to lead them back into the light.